Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday, October 5th, North Middlesex Council meeting. At this time, I'd call the meeting to order. Roll call. We do have Councillor Nickel is joining us by Zoom, and Councillor Keogh does send his regrets as a farmer. He is out combining soybeans. All right, disclosure of pecuniary interests. If you have any, please forward them through to Richard. Minutes of the previous meeting for September 21st. Any errors or omissions or business arising? Seeing none, we're looking for a motion to accept. Councillor Moyer, Councillor McClinchy, all in favor? Carried. So at this time, I got to join the regular meeting and go into public meeting, including Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Hemming, Councillor McClinchy, all in favor? Carried. Committee of Adjustment, our first item is notice of public meeting to consider application B12 2022 located at 33926 Grand Bend Road. The applicant, Paul, are you coming up to speak for this? Okay, come on up. All right, Stephanie, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you. All right, so the purpose and effect of the application for consent is to sever a surplus farm residence on a lot with a frontage of approximately 51.5 meters or 169 feet along Grand Bend Road, and an area of approximately 0.4 hectares or 0.99 acres in size from a farm parcel with a total area of approximately 100 acres. The lands proposed to be severed contains a single detached dwelling and accessory building and are serviced by a municipal water connection and a private septic system. The lands to be severed have an existing access off of Grand Bend Road. The lands proposed to be retained contain agricultural land and crop production and 3 outbuildings that are proposed to be removed by the applicant at the request of the applicant. The lands are unserviced and have an existing access off of Grand Bend Road. The provincial policy statement, county official plan, and the municipality's official plan generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas to dispose of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, subject to evaluation criteria. Planning staff are satisfied that the criteria for the severance of a surplus farm dwelling residence on the lands have been met or can be appropriately addressed via the conditions of consent. Notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The County of Middlesex engineer did require that as a condition of the application that the owner be required to dedicate lands up to 18 meters from the center line of construction of County Road 81 across the severed and retained parcels to the County of Middlesex for the purposes of road widening if the right-of-way is not already to that width. And Bridge Gas does note that there are service lines running within the area, which may or may not impact the severance application. The North Middlesex Public Works Department did note that the existing house is serviced by water. There is an existing access for both the farmland and the dwelling. Due to the severance from a drainage perspective, a drainage reassessment to the Prance Creek drain will be required as a condition of the severance application. And as mentioned, it is on private septic system. Hydro One provided the following comment that they reviewed the documents and they have no concerns at this time. The Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority noted that they didn't have any concerns as it's not in the regulated area and it did not appear to fragment the woodlands there that you can see at the top right of the screen. They're fully contained on the retained parcel. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official noted that the dwelling appears to be habitable, that a change of use permit for the drive shed on the severed lands is not required as it is a residential building not capable of housing livestock, that the 3 outbuildings, of course, be removed, and that the laneway at the rear of the lands to be severed be removed to prevent access onto the retained lands. And at the time of the writing the subject report, no comments from the public have been received. So it is recommended that the application be granted, subject to conditions which council will have before them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, would the applicant like comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. Just for the record, my name is Paul Hendricks, Hendrikx. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. The principal, the president of the applicant, was hoping to come today. He's actually in the field planting wheat, so he was unable to attend. So there is a family member representative who is here. And I agree with everything that the planner has said. There is only one comment. There's an issue that I'd like to raise with respect to condition 5. And that is the request from the engineer of Middlesex County to widen the road to 18 meters along the entirety of the property that abuts Highway 81. I pulled the instruments to see what the current road width was, and it's 50 feet on either side from the center line, which works out to 15.24 meters, which would mean that if we're extending it to 18 meters, we're going to have to add another 2.76 meters to or take away a strip that is that width along the farmland. I would direct council to take a look at the map to see exactly where, according to the Middlesex County mapping, where the line is now. You can see it's right at the edge of cultivation, which means that by my calculation, it's about 950 meters of length along there, approximately. It's hard to measure exactly because it's curved, but by my calculation, you'd be looking at a minimum of 2/3 of an acre and perhaps more. That would, if we leave condition 5 in, essentially allow the Middlesex County to obtain what would amount to a minimum of $20,000, perhaps $30,000 worth of arable farmland to be transferred to them for nothing. And my client is I think, justly concerned about that. We have no objection to extending the road allowance for the severed parcel. Of course, that's not being farmed. There's no issue with extending the roadway there, but I would submit to council that because I don't see it happening anytime soon, but if and when Middlesex County feels it needs to extend the road, it has the power to expropriate that land. And that would allow the farmer, whoever owns it at that time, if it's not my client, to be fairly compensated for that valuable farmland, as opposed to having it transferred now for nothing. So I would propose to amend condition 5 to just allow for the road widening over the severed portion and not the retained portion. And I would ask council to consider that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to committee, I would ask Stephanie, could you speak to that?
To the mayor and council, this is a comment received from the County of Middlesex, and I believe it's based on a policy requirement within the official plan that allows the county to do this for severance applications, plans of subdivision, and site plan applications for both the severed and retained parcels. And
I apologize,
Go ahead.
Your Worship, but if I may, it's not that I'm saying that the county doesn't have the power to do this. It's that in this instance, I don't think it's appropriate. And my client would submit that it would be better dealt with through an expropriation process if and when it's needed.
Okay, I will say I've had this conversation with county, with the engineer, more than once. Even to the point where I believe the landowner is responsible to pay for the survey. Correct? The county doesn't pay for the survey, so they get the land plus they get a free survey. But I know that is the policy, that is the official plan, as the planner had said. So I'm going to turn this over to committee for questions. Deputy Mayor Allison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Stephanie, The land that the county is requiring or requesting for along the highway, is that considered to be taken out of agricultural production?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I believe it could remain in crop production until such a time that it was needed for any road improvements.
I understand that, but officially, according to the official plan, it would no longer be agricultural land, it'd be road widening, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah,
Councilor McClinchy.
I attended when was it? You were there. Was it last Wednesday night? The OFA, like how I attended a meeting, it talked about agricultural land, how the importance of agricultural land and how much of it is being used up for development and that, and where's our food gonna come from, like down the road? And that was a big concern, and I really took that serious, because when you look around you, a lot of this agricultural land is being converted into housing. So after a while, there will not be a lot of agricultural land. And for this incident here, unless the county has plans already, I would like to see it continued as agricultural land if the county hasn't already started doing something. For what we're talking about here is very little as opposed to other areas. So,
Okay, Jonathan.
Through your worship, just to offer clarification in the practice of this exercise, which is in complete authority of the county to be able to do this. It's a general practice that is exercised in order to obtain the land for future use. Outside expropriation, and I know the applicant's lawyer is well versed with that, there is a large legal fee and timeline associated with that. And the lack of a better term, when an application is presented and the opportunity is there, more often than not, county and municipalities with the authority exercise that right. So the burden of the cost for future expropriation isn't there. That's just the general rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb is even the wrong terminology for it, but it's just the general practice that's been in place for many, many years.
Other questions? No other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. What is your wish? Councilor Moyer? As is? Moved by Councilor Moyer, seconded by Councilor Hemming. Comments on it? All in favor of that? Opposed? One opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, council.
Thank
Thank you, thank you, your worship.
Thank you.
That's my only matter.
Our next item is a notice of public meeting to consider application B13 2022 located at 620 Park Hill Drive. And if you'd like to come and sit up here, please. Okay, Stephanie?
Thank you. All right, so the purpose and effect of the consent is to sever a farm residence on a lot with a frontage of approximately 116 meters or 380.5 feet along Park Hill Drive, in an area of approximately 1.01 hectares or 2.52 acres from a farm parcel with a total area of approximately 50 acres. The lands proposed to be severed contains a single detached dwelling and an accessory building and are serviced by a municipal water connection and a private septic system. The lands to be severed has two existing accesses off of Park Hill Drive. The lands proposed to be retained contains agricultural land and crop production and are otherwise vacant of buildings and structures. The lands are unserviced and have an existing field access from Park Hill Drive / the unopened road allowance to the west of the property. The provincial policy statement, county official plan, and the municipality's official plan generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas to dispose of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, subject to evaluation criteria. Staff are satisfied that farm consolidation will be achieved and that the residents may be deemed surplus to the needs of the farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. The applicants have additionally provided information that demonstrates ownership of a number of farms with at least, I think, 3 other dwellings. The provincial policy statement directs that lot creation may be permitted for residents as a result of farm consolidation, provided the new lot is limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the use of the dwelling, the existing dwelling, and the appropriate sewage and water service. Similarly, the North Middlesex official plan indicates that the severed parcel should only be as large as necessary to accommodate the on-site water and sanitary services up to a maximum size of 2.5 acres. The intent of requiring the parcels to be only as large as necessary to accommodate the dwelling and the services is to protect the agricultural land from being removed from production. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed severed lot is larger than necessary to accommodate the dwelling and services, being the septic and water, and will result in removing approximately 1.4 acres of agricultural land from crop production. The proposal, therefore, as proposed, does not conform to the provincial policy statement, County of Middlesex official plan, and the North Middlesex official plan, which specifically requires that the lot be only as large as needed to service the dwelling and the services. Additionally, it is noted that the maximum lot area permitted in the agricultural small holding zone is 1 hectare or 2.5 acres, whereas the proposed severed lot is slightly larger than that. In order for staff to be in a position to support the application, staff recommend as a condition of the application that the rear lot line for the severed lot be relocated at the edge of the cultivated lands, which would result in a lot area of approximately 1 acre in size. Subject to the reduced lot size that staff recommended, planning staff are satisfied that the criteria for a severance application for a surplus farm residence can be met or appropriately addressed via the conditions. Notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The county engineer will require land dedication up to 15 meters from the center line of construction of County Road 18 to the severed and retained parcels to the County of Middlesex for the purposes of road widening if the right-of-way is not already to that width. And Bridge Gas does note that there may or may not be lines running within the area that may impact the severance application. The dwelling is connected to a municipal water connection. There is two accesses for the severed parcel, as well as an existing access for the farm parcel. And due to the severance application, a drainage reassessment for the Burley drain will be required as a condition of the severance application. And as mentioned, the dwelling is privately serviced by a septic system, so no municipal sanitary connection. Hydro One had no comments or concerns with the application. Asabo Bayfield Conservation Authority had no concerns. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official noted that the house appears to be habitable and required that confirmation that the septic system is wholly contained to the severed lands be provided. And at the time of writing the subject report, no written comments have been received from the public. So it is recommended that the application be granted subject to the conditions which council has before them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, the applicant, would you like your remarks?
Mr. Mayor and fellow councilors, my name is Michelle Peters. We are the owners, Henry J. Peters Farms Limited, of the said lands here. This is my daughter, Shannon. She is a nurse. Her husband is an electrician, and we would love to keep these people in our community. So we are looking to keep them at home. And this is the severed property that we're looking to put them on. So their being there will be an economic contribution to the local community because they will be staying here, raising their family here, sending their children to the local schools, supporting the local grocery stores and community shops along the way. So I would like to propose that it's actually 2.5 acres, and I apologize for the math, but Google Maps makes me do the numbers, and I had to use the numbers Stephanie said that were on there. So I don't want 2.5 to 2.5. The maximum is what I would like to work with. So I throw that back to council if they have any questions.
Okay, Thank you. Questions from council? Who wants to start? Deputy Mayor Canales.
Thank you, Mayor. Stephanie, I find it interesting that in your correspondence here, you indicate that the maximum severance allowed is 1 hectare. Is that correct? And all the official plans allow that. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it's just the North Middlesex official plan that speaks to the 1 hectare rule. And just to note, it's not a one size fits all. You have to take into consideration the entirety of that sentence, which is that the size is to be only as large as necessary to accommodate the dwelling and the services up to that 2.5 acres. So
Thank you. But one could argue that the dedication of lands to the county would offset the lands that would be in lawn, if you will, or grass. It's one and the same, although they could maintain agriculturally for what's dedicated to the county. This could also be returned to agricultural purposes.
I have no comment.
Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, Adrian pretty much asked the same questions I was going to ask. So I too am in agreement, like the road allowance is going to take up that point, whatever it is, 0.2 or whatever. If her math works out to the 2.5, which is our policy allowable is the full 2.5, and I fully support it. So.
Okay. Any other questions? No other questions. I would have one. Is there a compromise somewhere in there where our planner, the map's not in front of us right now, where the planner is saying at the edge of the cultivation, is there a compromise size in there? And I'm asking the applicant, I think, more on that.
I'm willing to compromise. I'm fine with that. But I think when you're looking at the frontage of that property, if the goal is to stay here and raise a family here, that's a long frontage. And if you're going to have children, I don't want them playing that close to the road. So, I mean, we have setbacks now. So if we do the existing the way it is, and we had the new setbacks with the road allowance, there's no way that they're going to be able to build a house in the future that will give them adequate setbacks to raise a family there because of the long frontage of the existing property. So that's why we're looking for the depth, so that when they do in the future want to rebuild a house, that they will be able to build within the existing bylaws and be able to raise a family there.
Okay. Councillor Moyer?
So that's they're not planning on having like a garden farm or something like that. It is just strictly to the larger lot to build on down the road.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I may. Furthermore, me and my husband are both very young in our career. My husband, as my mother said, is an electrician, and I wouldn't want to limit either one of us in our career to, either build a shed on that property if he wants to be, own his own business and obviously bring jobs into the area down the road.
Okay.
But that's just a consideration.
Okay.
Yeah, being familiar with the property, Mayor Rupp, I would also add and concur with what the applicant is saying, that the current house is currently very close to the main highway that goes by. There's very little frontage there. So I just support the applicant there.
I would say I know the property. I get that. Is there any other questions from council? No other questions? Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the application for consent as per the applicant's submission.
With the larger lot size.
Yes.
We have a mover on that. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Canales is seconding. Discussion on that? No discussion on that? In favor? Opposed? One opposed. It is carried. It is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This time I need to adjourn the public meeting and go to our regular meeting. Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We are at this time looking for a delegation. And that is Monteith Brown. We'll just wait for them to come up. And I think it's Todd Brown and Dennis Kwan that's coming, isn't it? You're going to do that?
So thank you, Mayor Ropp. I'm not sure if Todd is joining us or if it is just Dennis on behalf of Monteith Brown, but yeah, it's just Dennis. So Dennis is part of Monteith Brown Consulting, and they are the ones who are doing our recreation master plan. So Dennis, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, staff, and members of the public. My name is Dennis Kwan, and I'm the Senior Planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. Todd Brown, who is a president and principal planner of the firm, was hoping to join us tonight, but unfortunately he had a personal matter to attend to, so it'll just be me tonight. Can everybody see the presentation that I have? Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Before we get into it, just to give you an overview, what we have in front of you tonight is the Phase 1 report to the Recreation and Facilities Master Plan. The master plan was initiated over the summer, and the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide council with highlights from the Phase 1 report, which is really a background review that will inform the development of the master plan. So tonight I'll speak to the highlights and as well as our next steps, and I'll be happy to take any questions or comments that you may have at the end of the presentation. So the Facilities and Recreation Master Plan is a key initiative of the municipality's corporate strategic plan. It will create a roadmap to address community needs and strategic priorities through a planned action plan. So it will guide decision-making with respect to parks, recreation, and service delivery over the next 10 years. The master plan will consider a number of areas, including indoor and outdoor recreation facilities, such as arenas and playgrounds, as well as the master plan will look at parks, open spaces, and trails, as well as service delivery policies, programs, and practices. So in terms of where we are in the planning process, we've completed Phase 1 of the master plan. It included reviewing background documents, looking at your community profile to understand where and how North Middlesex is growing. We looked at your inventory of parks and recreation facilities as well as services to understand what you currently provide. We've undertaken site visits as well. And we've looked at key trends in the Parks and Recreation Center, in the Parks and Recreation sector. So all this information fed into a Phase 1 report that will be used as the foundation for building the master plan. So because the work completed to date is a background review, there are no recommendations yet. So that will come in Phase 3 when we get into the needs assessment process. So you can see in the next phase is Phase 2 is the public consultation phase, and I'll speak more towards that towards the end of the presentation. So we've reviewed a number of background documents, including the framework for recreation in Canada, as well as the Parks for All. We've reviewed your strategic plan and official plan, as well as development charge studies, accessibility plan. In addition, we've looked at the facility usage data to understand facility capacity, as well as we looked at ongoing subdivision projects that you have at the moment. So in terms of population growth, North Middlesex currently has a population of 6,600 residents, and the municipality is projected to grow to about 7,000 to 8,600 residents. And the majority of the new population is expected to occur within Park Hill and Elsa Craig settlement areas. North Middlesex is an aging population, so this trend is being experienced across Ontario. But like many other smaller municipalities, North Middlesex is also expected to experience growth among the younger age groups as families are more attracted to communities with affordable lifestyles. So what this means is that there will be a need to ensure that parks and recreation opportunities are available for all age groups and abilities, not just for one age group. So this will be one area that we'll be looking at through the master plan process. So there are a number of key trends in the parks and recreation sector that have an impact in North Middlesex. At a high level, people are putting a greater focus on community health and wellness, and they're looking for things to do to stay active and in the community. And it's not just about the big three sports of hockey, soccer, and baseball. People are looking for a more variety of activities, of physical activities. And there's a growing popularity in unstructured activities, as people have less time to participate in an activity on a regular basis, or they don't want to commit to registering for an 8-week program. Instead, they're looking for more of those drop-in type activities that fit within their busy schedules. So there's also a trend in multi-use parks and facilities. This is a shift away from single-use parks and facilities, as there's a greater desire for parks and facilities that have everything all in one spot, especially for families that want to participate together or at the same time. And multi-use parks and facilities also have efficiencies in construction and operations. The municipality also has some aging parks, parks and recreation infrastructure. Many municipalities are experiencing this, so there are decisions that need to be made about whether or not there should be assets that continue to be maintained, and if they are, that usually means that reinvestment is often needed. So alternatively, there may also be repurposing opportunities to address new demands as well. And as a small municipality, we recognize that municipality that can't provide everything for everyone. So there is a need to lean on your community partners to foster community development and empower groups to provide services for the municipality to support them and ensure that they are successful in the long term. In the parks and recreation sector, there's also a big emphasis on inclusion and access, as parks and recreation opportunities should be available for everyone, regardless of income, age, ability, orientation, and background. And lastly, the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly impacted how people participate in parks and recreation. The pandemic has certainly highlighted the importance of parks and recreation, not only from a physical perspective, but also from a mental health and social perspective as well. So these are just some of the trends that we're considering as we prepare the master plan. So in terms of parks and trails, the municipality currently has approximately 27 hectares of parkland across 7 sites. This excludes non-municipal providers such as campgrounds in the conservation area. And the municipality also has a network of sidewalks and park pathways, such as at the Lions Park or Coronation Park. So as we get into the needs assessment process of the master plan, we'll be evaluating future park needs to address the needs of future residents, as well as potential trail development opportunities. I won't go through each one of these facilities in detail, but really we just wanted to highlight the variety of recreation facilities that the municipality currently provides. So this includes any facilities from your arena and fitness center to playgrounds, splash pad, disc golf course. We also recognize that the municipality is moving forward with your off-leash dog park at Lions Park as well. So we have captured that through our report. As we get into the needs assessment, we'll be looking at the supply and distribution of your facilities to determine if you're providing the right mix of facilities or are there gaps to address current and future needs. And we also recognize that the municipality's facilities are complemented by non-municipal providers, such as schools and the Conservation Authority, as well as in adjacent municipalities. So we'll be considering these amenities as well. So we recognize that the Recreation Facilities Department primarily provides the facility space, while community organizations provide much of the programming to residents. The department also works with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to support programs and service providers in the community, the YMCA being one of the municipality's major providers. So the master plan process will looking at various areas, including program and service needs and gaps, as well as opportunities to provide groups with greater support and as well as potential staffing needs to support future service delivery. So in terms of the next steps, we'll be launching our community engagement activities. So we're currently working with Brandon and his staff on finalizing the details and logistics of these activities. But from a high level, we'll be holding a public open house to introduce the master plan to the public and to collect initial input. We'll be launching a community survey that will be available online and by hard copy. Stakeholder focus groups with community organizations will also be held. as well as interviews and workshops with counselors on the new council, as well as with staff. And we're also working with staff to finalize and set dates for these activities. And also we're recognizing the election period is coming up as well. So we'll aim to schedule around that period as well. So once the draft master plan is prepared, we'll be holding a final public open house towards the end of the planning process to test those draft recommendations with the public before the master plan is finalized. And we'll be providing regular status updates to council at the end of each phase, this presentation being the first, our first touch point with council. So from the consultation process, we are hoping to capture as much community input as possible from across the municipality. So that includes residents living within your settlement areas, but as well as in the rural area as well. So we want to avoid getting to the end of the master plan process and avoid hearing that somebody didn't get a chance to provide the input. So we'll be working with staff to promote the master plan within the community. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor, for any questions that you may have. Or any comments that you may have, or things that council feels that we should be aware of as we move forward through the master plan process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Just before I turn it over to council, just a comment to the report itself and looking at our age demographics going forward. And I have to say the one thing I have seen in our towns, our urban areas, is more young families in the last few years, and we do need to keep increasing that, as you say, and that changes what we need. The other comment I would make was I thought we were better for accessibility. You think you're doing really well, and I had the opportunity to go along with someone who had some mobility issues, and they pointed out some things to me at our arena and at different places. And it's an eye opener when you see people, what their challenges are. And so I look forward to what we're going to do here. So I'll turn this over to council for questions or comments at this time. Deputy Mayor Canellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I have about 3 questions. Mike, thank you for the report. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and I think it was really detailed, and I really appreciated the effort put into making this report. I read it with great interest. So one of the questions I have with you, and you made a comment about connecting with the community. And I think you made a comment that you do it online or whatever, and that has not traditionally been successful here, particularly not with the aging population, which you often refer to. What other initiatives will you take to connect with the general population in this community to ensure that you capture the interest of the community as a whole?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. That's a good question, and that's certainly a challenge that we hear in a lot of communities is how do we connect with the older adults and seniors, particularly as well as residents who are living in the rural area. We certainly recognize that communities are aging and not everyone is comfortable with being online, and we do recognize that there is a digital divide and challenges with accessing internet. So we do have online consultation activities, including the survey, but the survey will also be available as a hard copy. So we will be making that available in the community for people who want to pick up a copy and fill it out. And then we will ensure that we capture that information. People are also welcome to submit their comments in writing as well. And if we're more than happy to take those comments. If they wanted to drop off the written comments at any community facility, we can take that information. And we'll also be holding our public open house that will be held in person as well. So we are getting back into having in-person consultation as well. So we hope that for people who may not be comfortable with doing online, we will be welcoming those individuals through our in-person open house at the beginning and at the end of the master plan process.
Well, thank you for your reply. That sounds encouraging. I have 2 more questions. The other question I have for you is, when you do the evaluation and you may feel that the municipality has surplus properties or extra properties not being best utilized, would you make a recommendation that they be disposed of?
We have looked at that through you, Mayor. We have looked at those opportunities, and for other master plan projects, there may be surplus properties, surplus facilities that may not may be surplus in the community. So we often try not to make recommendations on getting rid of property or parks unless it's absolutely necessary. We may be looking at if we find that there are opportunities for, if there are underutilized facilities or parks, we may look at are there opportunities to repurpose that to address other demands. But until we get into that that phase of the needs assessment, it's hard to say. And when we make recommendations to get rid of property and facilities, sometimes the community may not take that positively, especially when they may feel like things are being taken away in the community. So that's a fine balance. But as we get into the needs assessment process, that's when we'll really get into taking a look at where are those potential opportunities, where are there underutilized facilities or surplus, and when we meet with the community as well, it'll be interesting to hear from them as well. Are there things that they feel underutilized, or are there things that they feel are missing in the community that may be a fit for those surplus sites that we may find?
And my final question, as you indicated, we are a very small population, which is an aging population. So we have a number of pensioners here, as you can imagine. So in your recommendations, will you be looking at cost-effective or cost-prohibitive options or recommendations? Because ultimately, some of these recommendations will have to be paid for, and there's only one taxpayer. Okay, will you be taking that into consideration in your recommendations?
Through you, Mayor, we certainly will be taking that into consideration. These master plans, they're 10-year documents, so we certainly want to have the document to be realistic and right for your community. So the recommendations need to be right for North Middlesex. So recommendations that we may be making in this document may not be appropriate for a City of Toronto master plan, for example. So we need to make sure that the recommendations that we make here are realistic and they're achievable and financially realistic. But also at the same time, we know that these master plan, there also needs to be a consideration for aspirational recommendations, or kind of visionary recommendations as well, but also recommendations that are achievable. But one of the benefits of having this master plan, it really it helps the municipality apply for grants. So there's lots of grant opportunities for capital projects, and oftentimes there will be requirements for those grants for having a master plan. So this master plan can help you demonstrate to those to the province or the federal government that you have studied needs for parks and recreation facilities, and you can demonstrate that these are priorities because we've done the needs assessments, we've met with the community, and they've said that this is a community. So the master plan will have recommendations that are realistic, but also ones that recommendations that you can aspire to, because also the master plan will help you grow your parks and recreation facilities. And as the mayor alluded to earlier, that as you're attracting more residents, one of the things that they're going to be looking for is what parks and recreation facilities that you will be providing, or what is the plan for parks and recreation. So this master plan will help you in that way as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brandon, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Nelson. One of the things that I had talked about with our CAO is how we reach some of the more difficult people, and difficult isn't difficult to reach. We talked about these poster boards that we are going to take out to the master or to the open house, and then posting them in our town halls, maybe getting copies of them post in our day center in Elsa Craig at Craigwheel Gardens, maybe posting it at the day center here at Chartwell Gardens, posting it in our arena so that people put sticky notes up constantly and we get feedback throughout the process, as well as having the hard copy surveys available at our local grocery stores, our libraries, with drop boxes there, so they can just bring it back, drop it in a survey box, and then once a week a staff member can just grab the surveys and collect.
Thank you, Brandon. I like that. I think you got some really good ideas there.
Brandon, just on those surveys, can we add our service groups to that as well? Our different Optimus, Lions, Horticultural Society, Village Association.
Yes, they will. I will certainly forward them all the information for the surveys as well. They are included in the interviews that Monteith Brown will be conducting. So they will be conducting the interviews with all our service clubs as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Other questions from council? Other questions from council? No other questions at this time?
Just a
Go ahead,
comment.
Councilman Clinchie.
I'm sorry. When we're talking about 6,600 residents, that was based on 2021. When the census was done, was that done early 22? What is the number now? It seems like I see a lot of homes going up in that, but it doesn't seem like the population goes up.
Through your worship to Councilman McClinchy, to answer your question transparently, there's a lot of numbers out there that people cherry pick to use at certain times.
Yeah.
Census data is usually historically 4 years behind in terms of some of the occupancy permits that are pushed out, but the numbers that are reflected in the community profile, and Brandon and I talked about this at the very beginning, we are kind of including some of the new plans of subdivision, knowing what's coming around the corner, and that's really what the master plan needs to do for us, is project in the future what our needs are going to be. But to give you a clear answer, I could follow up with our true census data, which I think is around 6,200, but I may be mistaken on that. But they recently just redid it in 2021. I just don't know if they're formalized and published yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So as you're pointing out, I've heard 6,800, I've heard different numbers, but any other questions for Dennis before we let him go? Seeing none, Dennis, thank you very much for this presentation. Look forward to what we come up with and through this process. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. So we will now at this time get into department reports, and the first one is from the Executive Assistant HR Coordinator. Who's doing that? Jonathan, you're doing that one?
Through your worship, members of council, for your consideration tonight, it's the electronic monitoring policy. The recommendation before you is that council adopt the electronic monitoring policy as presented, that the employees as defined in the scope of the policy be provided with a copy of the document within 30 days of its implementation. Before I open the floor for any questions, I'd just like to highlight some of the background. This requirement was added to the Employment Standards Act in and around April of this year, where we are legislated if we have more than 25 employees, we have to have this policy in place, and that's why it's coming before you rather than the policy committee. We have until October 11th, being just around the corner, to have this fully implemented. One thing that's noteworthy in the policy itself, we've had to include provisions as it relates to extension off that, and I think it's very much noted that that needs to be identified for the employees, because sometimes that slip into personal work life doesn't bar you from having access to something that may or may not be sensitive. The other thing to be cognizant about is, my apology. The other thing to note is that there's a schedule there that identifies how we monitor and the access to the monitoring. So I'll open the floor to open for questions now.
All right, we're just going to get Jonathan to a different mic. No. But questions from council on this. We'll say that we went through this at county first. And there was many questions on, what depth of monitoring they're doing and what about private conversations. And it was more, my questions were more like, what about these private conversations with social services at the county level? We don't have that conversation, but there are things that should remain confidential. And so we had a very good conversation at that as to what was and wasn't. So it's worth the reading to see this policy and read this policy and be aware of it. But questions from council on this? Okay, and then Councillor Moyer after that.
Okay. So my question for you is that should you become aware of some information that might be concerning to someone's safety, I don't see anything in here where there's an obligation to disclose that to the authorities to deal with that or to the proper resources.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, are you speaking in more in terms of something that could be a personal threat against an employee, or the intention of the monitoring is to establish the business corporation? There is also, I hope this answers your question, there's a gauge that one has to judge in terms of dealing with employees in terms of sensitive matters and rising above the situation and doing the right thing. So that is housed in terms of authority between myself and the HR director, which would be Donna, and there's gut checks to that. I hope that answers your question, and we only can do the best that we can.
Well, I was more, I guess my question is more focused on, say, domestic abuse or harassment.
There are other policies that identify that as well. And I can't remember the bill off the top of my head, but I think it was addressed a number of years ago because of an incident that happened in a corporation.
I understand that, but if you should become aware of the information through the monitoring policy, then you'd be under an obligation to report it.
That is correct. The one thing I should also identify, although it may perceive to be an overreach to a certain extent, and one may take that approach, this is a passive monitoring process. So setting up the checks and balances and making sure the policies are there in place in case that we have to use it. I know a lot of other organizations are dealing with this, is what is passive and what is reaching too far.
You know, as you're speaking, it comes to my mind, George Orwell and Mr. Pierre Trudeau's comment that the government has no right to be in our bedrooms. I think we're heading there.
No comment.
Well, just a comment to that was, we did ask that very question. Is there people monitoring this? Is this being monitored by staff, by people? And the answer to that is no. It's being put in the archives, or, you know, it's being put in the vault, I guess you'd want to say, in the records, so that they can get that information needed, but there's nobody actively monitoring this.
But weren't there some terms or terminologies that would be automatically red flagged? I thought there was.
Through your worship, or to add to the conversation, we are bolstering up some IT practices right now that include baseline that will establish normal trends. We also have policies for certain outrageous situations that need to be there. And when that baseline trend is there, then that gives us the ability to monitor what may or may not be going on. And to answer your question, there are certain terms and phrases that are flagged.
And I think that's a great idea. I actually like that policy very much.
Councillor Moyer.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yep. That was part of my question as well, is with the privacy, where how far this goes. But I take it this also goes with GPSs, electronic tracking vehicles, and
Absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor Moyer, it is all inclusive of anything that we have that has electronics associated with it that we can monitor. So whether that be surveillance cameras that we have here, whether that be GPS units, and, you know, barring some of the practices that we have put in place, some of our employees don't know that we even have GPSs on our trucks.
Mhm.
So I'm quite surprised when that comes up, but this will kind of educate at the same time and make sure that they're aware. In that instance for GPS, it's also protecting the employee as well, because there could be an incident that he said, she said, between a resident and one of our workers, where if I could go to GPS and say, in fact, he wasn't there that day, that can be the end of the conversation. But this will identify some of those limitations.
now, are all of our buildings monitored?
I believe for the most part, but I'll pass that over to Brandon to clarify.
So through Mayor Up to Councillor Moyer, currently our West Williams Hall is not monitored. Community Center in Park Hill, but the arena does catch that, and then some of our parks aren't. I have heard from some residents that they would like to see a little bit more surveillance in parking lots of some of our parks. So that is something that I plan to bring forth in 2023 budget to try and provide a safer parking area.
Okay. Right. And so cell phone conversations and emails and that would be all considered private.
That would, so if you have a corporate phone, then yes, that is, you're on corporate time. So that would be inclusive of this policy. That the gut check for an individual's personal phone doing corporate business, it's our due diligence to identify that if it's sensitive information that you're dealing with, It's not only us, but it's in FIPA. That's the underlining regulation in the court of law that says that they have the right to the access to that. So this is identifying that that could happen.
Thank you.
All right.
Uh,
Just a second. I got Counselor Nichol first, then Counselor McClinchy, and then Counselor Hemming.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead,
a
Joan.
question. Our fire departments, all our vehicles, have they got GPS tracking on them as well?
Through your worship to Councillor Nichol, I believe they do not, but I know our fleet in terms of our truck, not the pickup trucks do, but not the actual fire truck. So that might be something we need to consider in future as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering for response time, if anybody ever argued, if we had GPS, then we would be able to track that response time for those trucks.
That's a very good comment, and we'll address it with the 2023 budget or investigate.
Okay, thank you. Counselor McClinchy?
Okay, the Carnegie Library, we had put in a monitoring system there as well. Now, is that connected here with the municipality? Because we paid for the system, but I don't know how that works.
So through Mayor Opp to Councillor McClinchy, it is almost like it's a point-to-point connection off our building, so we can access it through a computer, through a portal, but it is just a live stream of
What's happening?
of the mural.
Oh, okay. Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hemming.
Yeah, Jonathan, you had mentioned about some people not knowing that we even have monitored or tracking on some of the equipment. Do you not have a legal obligation to disclose that to all the employees?
Through your worship to Councillor Hemming, effective October 11th, yes, we do. So that's cleaning it up. I would argue in best practices, they should be informed, and I lean into the opportunity to tell staff when I have that chance that we in fact can do that, and it's actually there to protect them. But this will now cast the net wider in identifying that to people.
And of course, we didn't say it here on this, but it does include council and all of our staff. I mean, council's included in that as well. So that does include our iPads, which are brought through from our North Middlesex properties. So any other questions on this policy? Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of the council adopt the electronic monitoring policy as presented, and that the employees, as defined in the scope of the policy, be provided with a copy of the document within 30 days of its implementation. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Moyer. In favor? Carried. Carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Manager of Public Works, Transfer Station operating hours. Jaden, are you doing that?
Yep, I'll be doing that report. Okay, so before you here is the first report is item 7.2 is on the transfer station operating hours. This is a pretty straightforward report. So as council may be aware, the transfer station in Park Hill is operated by the Public Works Division. The transfer station is located at 395 Victoria Street, and annually we do have to post the operating hours. So attached to the staff report is a schedule that outlines the hours. These are pretty consistent with what we've been doing for the last decade or so. And the recommendation with the report is that council approve the proposed 2023 transfer station hours of operation.
Any questions from council?
I have a
Councillor McClinchy.
question. Okay, for the transfer station, is that allocated only to North Middlesex residents or outside of North Middlesex?
I'm going to pass this one to Jonathan.
Jonathan, you have that.
Through your worship to Councillor McClinchy, as defined by the environmental compliance approval certificate, regionally transfer stations are held for the region that they serve. We do have some checks and balances in place in terms of coming in and identifying your address, but we do not take licenses to confirm that. So that would be a capital cost. As you may recall, I think it was 2019, I came to council with a report on some of the operational practices, identifying the revenue that was generated and the expense. This is generally a net, we don't make money off of this. In fact, we lose money off of it. So it's a fine balancing act. If you put too many roadblocks in front of people, this is going to end up in our ditch. So that's a bigger burden than, having somebody say a different address that they shouldn't have. So hope that answers your question. We could do it better, but we,
Okay, but so, yeah, it doesn't really answer, but I just thought if somebody didn't live in North Middlesex, they just lived outside of North Middlesex, and they bring their stuff to the transfer station is what I'm asking. Or I have to.
we have to identify the address that they're coming from.
And do they accept it regardless?
I haven't been in the transfer station, and I can't say regardless, but I do know that people are turned away, whether that be from the product that they're bringing in or the amount that they're bringing in, or arguing with the cost that is incurred to dump. So we do turn people away occasionally.
Okay.
Okay. There was one thing that did come up that I wanted to ask, and that is, I think it was at the one candidates meeting. There was someone saying that they needed to get the transfer station. I believe it was even a tidy yard. I don't want to say who or any, it's not about anybody, but so they had a timeline and they couldn't get to the transfer station. Can they call the office to get that opened, for that type of situation?
Yes, so as identified on the hours that are posted, there are off-hour opening fees, so it's a $50 fee to have the depot opened up, and minimum 24 hours notice is required to the Public Works Division. I believe that's how that works, and Jonathan, correct if there's anything else.
Okay, it was somebody that works all day and they can't be there Wednesday or Saturday because they work weekends and days. So the employee, it would be $50 if they call a day ahead or whatever, and the fee is $50. What about the manpower hours? Do they have to pay for that as well?
Through your worship to Councilor McKinley, the $50 is meant to be inclusive of the sunk cost of our hours as well.
But, okay, so we don't have, so basically, they can't, that's an exception for them. They'd have to pay that regardless Wednesday and Saturday, so they can't make it.
That is correct. Alternatively, I know the fluctuation that we've had on spring cleanup is usually over the weekends as well. That might be a better alternative for this individual.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and that's so they can, if they pay $50, they can have it open. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
I just have one quick question, and that is the spring cleanup. I know that before we had 3 bins, I think we went down to 2. Is it still being well utilized?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, for the most part, yes. The 2 regions are, we always kind of, at the public works yard, we don't see a lot, but when we've talked about removing that, it generally comes up that they need a little bit. So actually we reverted to going to a smaller bin last time. So we're trying to find that happy balance. But again, we want to accommodate getting rid of rubbish, because if we don't, it's going to end up in our ditch.
And that's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? If not, we have a recommendation to approve the 2023 transfer station hours of operation. Moved by Councillor Hemming, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next is a report from Public Works on the surplus plow truck. Jaden.
Okay, so the second report here from Public Works is regarding the surplus plow truck. So that is the 2010 International Single Axle Plow Truck. The recommendation with the report is that the 2010 International Single Axle Plow Truck be declared as surplus to the municipality of North Middlesex and sold on the GovDeals government auction website as is. So I'll just go through a few points in the report. As council may be aware, the Public Works Department has a fleet of snow plows that are deployed every winter as part of the winter maintenance program. This particular unit is in a state where the repairs required to make the truck safe to operate are cost prohibitive in the range of $10,000. And Public Works staff have conducted a cost benefit analysis of doing maintenance versus disposing the vehicle. And the option that was chosen was to declare this vehicle surplus and sell it, and look towards purchasing a new plow to fill this vacancy in our fleet. So in the discussion portion of the report, there's also some information about in the interim period where this vehicle is taken out of operation, we would propose using utilizing existing tandem trucks for sanding and renting an agricultural tractor equipped with a plow blade for winter maintenance in Park Hill. So Public Works staff have reviewed this option, the costing, and found it as a feasible alternative, while the new budget is being procured. As I noted, there is a budget in the 2022 capital budget allocated for a new single axle plow in the amount of $300,000. So that's the report, and I will open it up to questions.
Questions, Council? Councilor Moyer.
Just the rest of the year, what's this truck used for as well?
Sorry, what is it used for the rest of the year?
Yes.
I believe this, I'm not sure, Jonathan, if you know the answer to that. I don't know that.
Yes.
Through your worship to Councilor Moore, it would have been typically utilized in hauling activities. This is one of our weaker trucks, so it would have been the last one when you were mobilizing for gravel, let's say. So really the benefit of or the situation at hand is the winter transition into snow operations that we're missing one of our fleet complements. But I would like to note that we've been battling this truck, as a lack of a better term, since the end of last year, the beginning of the season of winter last year, where we actually had to do this rental arrangement in regards to getting it. And that's why it was prompted to cycle into 2022 budget for a full replacement. We just can't get it back on its feet. That's the biggest problem right now.
No, I was just wondering if this type of vehicle is best utilized, or there'd be a, like the tractor or a different piece of equipment that would be better for snow plowing within our urban areas.
Within our urban areas, it does provide a tighter turning radius, so we can salt and sand a lot more efficiently, where other fleet can't really do that. So replacing is appropriate in terms of our efficiencies. It's just, like I said, we can't keep pouring good money into bad money into this thing without calling a spade and saying we got to move on.
That truck is ordered, is it not? The replacement truck has been ordered.
So, through your worship, I would have to follow up with that. I believe it's in the report, but there's a long lead time on these trucks right now. This is why we're trying to just get this ahead of you guys and say, this is surplus. Let's not monkey around with it anymore.
Yeah, and so just to clarify on that, if I can, I thought this was ordered like maybe not a year ago, but quite a long time ago. And it's just, and I agree, we don't want to spend any money on this. We know about some of the, like, let's get rid of the truck as far as that.
So I do have that information, actually. It has not been ordered yet. It was planned to be tendered this fall, 2022. So I think with this report and getting the go ahead to dispose of this vehicle, we'd be then getting that order in. I think it's approximately upwards of 2 years to get the new vehicle. So we'd be looking at 2 seasons of this interim option.
Okay, and I guess that was an assumption on my part. And when we did the budget, that we were going forward with it. We never actually, all right, thank you. That clarifies. Other questions? Deputy Mayor.
Just a quick question. Given that the fire department is currently using a works department, the shop here in Park Hill, where is this, will this unit, the tractor that we're going to be renting, where will we put it? In Brandon's shed, or where it's going to be? And for winter storage?
I thought there's.
I don't have that information right now.
Through Mayor Roth to Deputy Mayor Nelson. In the last season, they used our shed to house their plow unit. We have had a tractor sit outside before. If they want to park it in our lot, have it hooked up, like plug inside for a block heater, that would be more than reasonable. But in terms of storing it inside our shed, we do not have the space.
It's just my concern would be leaving it outside, that things have disappeared from that area before. So
the nice part about that is our facility there is all under camera, which is a major deterrent.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no more questions, we have a recommendation to deem it surplus and to take it to GovDeals government auction. Moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next one is the Ells Creek Banner Project update.
Okay, so that's me as well. So as council may recall, back in December of last year, there was a delegation from the Elsa Craig Royal Canadian Legion Branch 422 Committee. And they brought before council a proposal for a project that would honor local veterans by hanging memorial banners on municipal streetlight poles. There was generally broad support for the project from council, and there was direction for staff to follow up on the costs for additional brackets. So since then, and since I've joined in here, I've been working with the Royal Canadian Legion branch to get things in place for this project. We've reviewed the existing streetlight poles in Elsa Craig and options for getting these banner arms out there to support the memorial banners. There are existing banner arms on the smaller streetlight luminaires in the downtown area in Elsa Craig. They're on the sidewalk side. There's not quite enough of them for all the banners that they have been requested through residents. I think there's approximately 65. So very, there's a lot of strong desire for these banners from residents. So we're looking to add some additional banner arms to support this project and get banners up. Due to the height of the existing streetlights within the downtown area of Elsa Craig, the banners actually cannot be extended on the road side because they have to be so high per the Highway Traffic Act and to have clearance from large vehicles. So what we're looking at doing is adding additional banner arms. They'd be double-sided and they'd be on the larger streetlight poles on either end of town. So we've been working with a local supplier who's provided these products before. And we've got a price on those. And through this report, we're just reporting back to council as was committed through the previous meeting back in December 2021. The recommendation is for council to authorize staff to purchase banner arms and materials so we can get those ordered and get them installed in time for the Royal Canadian Legion in Elsa Craig to get these banners installed. Our public works staff would be undertaking the installation of both the banner arms and the banners themselves, and we'll be looking to do that towards the end of October. So we have to get the order in ASAP. I'll open it up to questions.
Questions?
I just have
Councilman
one
Clinton
question.
and Councilman Hammond.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Okay. Is that up for Remembrance Day or is that year round? Or how long do those banners stay up? Like I really not sure on that.
Yep. So those banners go up, as I said, end of October. We'll put the banner arms and the banners up for the Legion, and they'll stay up just only for a couple weeks through Remembrance Day, and then towards the end of November when we go to install the Christmas decorations, they come down at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jaden.
Councilor Hammond.
Yeah, just a quick question. Are they aluminum or are they going to be steel?
They are aluminum.
Other questions? I'll just make a comment to it. I think it's a great thing going. I can't believe the response they got. And I hope to see maybe in Park Hill, they will follow suit. I've seen these at a couple of towns and I think it's a great thing for that to remember. So yeah, go ahead, Jade.
I guess just one detail that was also in the report would just be the source of financing for the materials. And our recommendation would be to get those funds from the account council - other donation and support payments. And that was reviewed and concurred by the treasurer.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, we're looking for moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councilor Hemming. In favor? Carried. Perfect. Thank you very much. At this time, passing of accounts. So we are just looking for Estelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses for the period of September 15th through to the 29th for a total of $2,209,670.06. I open the floor to questions.
Questions? Counselor McClinchy.
I do. See, on page 4, okay, I better get the right place here. Okay, 004052, Jamie McLeod, Public Works renovations. Was that allocated in the budget to do whatever renovations?
Through the mayor to Councillor McClinchy, this is for the Public Works renovation building for which we have received a grant. And yes, it was approved through, I believe it was the 2021 budget capital projects.
Okay, Jonathan.
Sorry, Estelle, we just had a little hard time hearing you. So, so through the worship to Council McClinchy, this was actually funded through a grant.
Okay.
The COVID-19, they did a joint modernization in terms of helping office spaces with some of the separation distances, and we were lucky enough to be awarded a sizable grant for this.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Thank you, Estelle, for getting back to me this afternoon. I won't ask that question now, but I do have a question, I think, for Jonathan on that. And I see that we consistently, every pay period, we're paying Mr. Valley large sums of money, but I'm not seeing anything really happening over there. What are these funds for that we're giving him? What's he doing?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, and I'd ask for Brandon to step in if I miss anything here. As you may or may not be aware, for the general public's benefit, contaminated soils were identified on site that pushed the project's scope, and we have some creep coming through in terms of schedule slippage. We also had some scope changes at the front end. To answer your question in terms of the value that Valley is giving, we will be coming back to next council in October 17th, I believe, with hopefully John Valley here to discuss some of the progress to date. And although I would defer to him, what I can offer today is that we are bringing the project back in terms of being on, I won't want to say on track schedule wise, but getting the proper attention that we need from not only KNL, but Valley as well. So we had a very good meeting with them last week in terms of some of the performance that we feel needs to improve. And I can say it was received. And although some action has happened lately, we are going to keep putting our foot to the pedal to make sure that we get the deliverables that we asked for.
Thank you. Just a follow up then for Brandon, if I may. When can we anticipate that the fire hall portion would see some progress? I see the steel structure's been up for the land ambulance, but there's been very little movement on the fire hall itself.
So through Mayor Ropp to Deputy Mayor Nelson, we should be able to see some type of a shell probably middle of November. What happened was Steelway, the pre-engineered steel side came from them. We had hoped we would get that in late August. Supply chain issues pushed them back to late September. Before they can actually stand that, they have to get a floor poured. They had planned to pour the floor at the end of August. These contaminated soils, everything kind of got shifted. Now we're into not prime concrete weather. So we're looking at a window here, and they're hoping by the end of next week, floors poured, and then from there, they will start standing testing.
Can we expect that the building will be enclosed before the severe weather comes in?
That is optimistic. They are planning to have it enclosed in tarps and heated that way and build underneath tarps. That's the site supervisor has assured me that that's already been ordered and it will be looked after in terms of making sure that the progress happens through the winter to happen.
Thank you.
And that will all be outlined.
Thank you. Any other questions for the accounts payable? No other questions for accounts payable? All right, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor McClinchy. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Estelle.
Thank you.
Committee reports. I'm going to do it a little differently. Is there any committees there wishing to report? Rather than list them out. I mean, the one thing I do want to make comment to is that hope as soon as possible with new council. All right, that with new council that we can put committees in action quickly. Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, just the rec committee. We had a meeting Monday night. And we discussed the master plan for that. And that was our last meeting for the year, right? Was there something else? Okay, so that was our last meeting for the year pending the new council.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we want to get our new committees when council reconvenes with the new council as quickly as possible and up and running. And I think of the Economic Development Committee, we'll have a new person in place then as well, so we can get moving and get on the ground running. So correspondence, climate, environment and climate change Canada, recovery planning document on the species at risk. That's for, I think, that the turtle that reports on. Receive and file. Tay Valley Township, municipality of, it's all about the wildlife damage compensation program. Receive and file. Jacob McGee, thank you for he was one of the young people that received a ring for his work and his dedication to the community. Also from Anna Lee. Councilor McClinchy, wasn't she the valedictorian? Wasn't Anna Lee the valedictorian? I think so. I shouldn't say, but no, but the valedictorian. So thank you from her as well. Municipality of Grey Highlands increasing fines for all levels of speeding. Receive and file. Oh, Councilor Nickel.
I would very much still like to see that supported.
Moved by Councilor Nickel, seconded by Councilor McClinchy. In favor? Carried. Okay, Municipality of Brighton, physicians tuition programs. Receive and file. Are you speak on that, Councilor Nickel?
No, that's fine. Receive and file is fine with me.
Okay. County of Norfolk request to support the Draven alert for vulnerable persons. We supported that in July. The Aqua info sheet that I hope everybody's seen it. Planning report for the third quarter activity. Receive and file. It's pretty straightforward report. Municipality of Huron Shores, Badolf about the strong mayors, and that's now proclaimed into law. So Middlesex London Health Unit monthly report. Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario Right to Know Day. Receive and file. North Middlesex Community Policing Committee, past minutes and upcoming agenda. Just to comment on that, they're changing. Will that have an effect, the changes that the OPP are bringing forward?
Through your worship to council, I actually just got a notice the other day that they will be proceeding with the review of our structure and our governance reform, as you recall from last year, through our, there's so many acronyms nowadays, but we have to officially go into a board structure with our neighboring municipalities. We haven't had quite the reception in terms of having a willing partner with the First Nations right now. So we need to have that in place. And then we obviously need the approval from the province to say that it's approved. But we've taken a very similar approach. I don't want to say cookie cutter, but taking the lead of the province in determining what our structure would look like and the representation makeup. So a report will be coming to council probably early next year about the formalization of that. But like I said, I just got notice that we are now in a review process.
So early in the new council.
Most likely. I think their tentative timeline is actually to have it in place by now, but it shifted a little bit and I think it would be early next year.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. To the chair of this committee, I see that Earl Hamilton is leaving after many years of participation. So my question for you is, do you still have sufficient numbers on this committee, or are you recruiting more? What's the attendance like?
We have new members, but we hope to. Earl is stepping down due to 2 reasons. He's moving out to Craig and his wife is into London, so it'd be not very convenient for him to be there. So, and then I think we would probably have somebody that will move forward for chair. But I believe this committee is beneficial. That's what we're trying to get in, hoping to get in now is neighborhood watch, but you have to work with a police officer to do that. And I think more people would be more interested in becoming involved. I couldn't go to last night's meeting because I had another commitment. Did you go, Joan? Joan? I just wanted to see.
No, unfortunately, I'm out of town. The OPP did make a comment though that neighborhood watch would be something that would not go. That is something they have discontinued. However, they do encourage us to keep that committee and encourage more people to join that committee. It is very informative as to what's going on with our community. So it would be a great committee for more people to join. There are enough now to sustain it, but definitely we could use some more.
Can't hear.
It's Jonathan, you wanted to expand on your,
Through your worship, I apologize. I don't know if I want to answer your question directly. So the Community Policing Committee is a committee of our council. The reform that's coming from the province is establishing a committee of representative municipalities within an OPP's regional district. This committee could still exist, but the information that would be coming from the other committee is around the corner, would almost be one and the same in terms of the information that could be shared for the respected areas of community engagement. We can certainly keep it in place. And I'd actually encourage that, since we've got some people here that we can pull from the general public that would possibly want to sit on this other committee that will be formed next year. So it could impact it. It most likely will, but I'm not necessarily saying that it could still stand on its own.
okay. Thank you. That's all on that one. East Ferris Police Services Board on School Bus Safety Program. Let's remember, Adam, I believe they're talking about that's where the cameras on the arms. Receive and file. It has been forwarded to it. Richard, go ahead, speak on that.
Yes, your worship, just that additional wording was because I did send it to the Community Policing Committee, all the members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, other and urgent business. The first item is the Park Hill Carnegie Library. And Brandon, you're going to speak on that.
Mayor Opp and members of council, we received a request from the Friends of Park Hill Carnegie early last week. The request was that they would like to have our facility free of charge in order to host dances for grade 7 and 8 students. They would like to host a Halloween dance. Obviously, they're looking for different ways to fund their utilities moving forward. They thought this was a good opportunity for them. Unfortunately, they didn't miss the vibrancy fund last year for it, as it's a new initiative. And what their hope is that it's a popular dance, that they can have a nominal admission fee, sell pop and chips, and have a dance for us grade 7 and 8's community. And then their request to council is that fee for the facility paid.
Comments, questions from council? Councilor McClinchy.
I think that's a great idea, because we did have that years ago. I'm not sure how many years ago, where it was for students, grade 7 and 8. It was well supervised. There's just pop and chips. There's no alcohol. There's no nothing. And none of the students can leave the building unless the parents are there to pick them up, sort of thing. But it's like a fundraiser. And I think it'd be a service to the community, for the younger people in the area, where they get to know each other. And I think it's going to be it's going to be well organized. So I would support that.
Other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Nelson, and then Councillor Nickel.
The question I have for you, Brandon, is are they asking for this facility to be made available in prime time, like on a Friday night, when would it be needed for other events that are paying customers? I'm just curious about that.
So the weekend that they are looking at hosting it would be a weekend that isn't currently rented. Obviously, if we have a paying customer in there that's already had it rented, that weekend would not work for them. I believe what they're looking for moving forward is just council's blessing to pick 2 weekends between now and Christmas in order to try these dances to see what their appetite is for.
So then basically you would determine which weekends are available and let them know.
Correct. It would
Okay.
have to be, if they're doing it on a Saturday or a Friday night, it would have to be an open Friday night where there's nothing else.
Thank you.
Counselor Nickel.
So I think most of my question was answered. I think ongoing, I think that would be something that council would have to consider. I think it's a great idea, but I think after the new year, I would like to see them bring it back for council consideration. Again, we can't take away from income. And while it's a great idea, we have to be very aware that it is an income source for us. So I'd like to see how they make out till December. And then I would like to readdress it at council at that point.
Thank you, Counselor. Go ahead, Brandon.
And through Mayor Ropp to Councillor Nickel, I do believe that they intend on putting something together for the Vibrancy Fund this year for however many events they look for next year, so that they wouldn't be getting a free rental. They'd be using some of the Vibrancy funds that we receive.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Counselor Hemming.
Yeah, they'd have to do that rather soon because the cutoff date, is it not in November or something like that? Just make sure they're aware of that.
Through Mayor Ropp to Councillor Hemming, I have made them aware of that, and I do think that they just wanted to get these first two scheduled, because if the first one, it would probably help them have an idea how many they want.
Right. Okay, any other questions? We have a request in front of us. What's your wish?
I make a motion that we support them and give them the, when we're off days, the community center to have a free night. Because it's a service they're providing to the younger people, and there's really nothing in the community for younger people. So why not?
So they're asking for 2 dates, I think,
Oh, are they?
2 nights, correct? Okay,
Excellent.
so that's your motion for the 2
Yes,
nights?
yes.
Okay, a seconder for that, Counselor Moyer, in favor? Carried. Thank you. Jaden, you have some updates, I think, under other business as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ropp. Just a couple of verbal updates I wanted to give on some of our capital projects that we have going on in North Middlesex, 3 in particular. The first project I want to give an update on is the Elsa Craig Water Tower, and just wanted to let council know that things are coming along very well there. They are filling up the tank right now as we speak, and it may be full now. It's a long process to fill it up. It's a very large capacity, but along with that, I was there yesterday, and lots of contractors and subcontractors busy working inside the tank with all the mechanical systems, doing functional testing and calibration. So that's all going very well, and we're expecting the tank to be online by Wednesday or Thursday next week, and that is going to help normalize the pressure in Elsa Craig. You know, we've seen some issues recently with pressure being low and then pressure being high, and that creating some leaks, but that's certainly good news for that project. I'll just go through all 3 and then I'll take any questions after. The second project I wanted to give an update on was the Elsa Craig wastewater treatment plant SCADA upgrades. So as council may recall, this was a project that received funding through the municipal modernization program. So it was 75% funded through that grant that covered approximately $200,000. And that's modernizing the SCADA equipment, the electronic controls and data collection equipment that are in that plant that will help it run more efficiently and more automatically. So that project is ongoing right now. There were some delays with getting some of the electronic equipment with some of those supply chain issues that we've seen. But we were able to get our final report in to get all the funding for that. So we did capture that, and the implementation of the systems will be happening earlier in the new year. The third project I wanted to give an update on, and I know it's on top of many people's minds, would be the Park Hill Main Street water main project. We did have an update, a high level update that was sent out last week in the North Middlesex Navigator newsletter. just giving people a heads up that construction is planned to start this year. It's going to be starting in the coming weeks. Next week, the contractor Briex Construction is going to be mobilizing equipment and materials to the area to get prepared to start. And the week of October 17th, they will be starting with the construction. So we've had a lot of meetings and conversations recently with the contractor and with our engineering consultant, SEMA, to work out all the final details. The project will, as you may know, require road closures on Main Street and some detours. We are just working out those final details now, where we want the project to start, noting that it is a late construction start. Originally, it was planned to start at the north end of town. So those meetings are ongoing, and our plan is to finalize that by the end of the week, get some communications out, get a letter sent out, update the project webpage to make sure everybody has the most current information of what to expect there. And with the Park Hill Parade coming up on November 27th, we do want to make sure that we can accommodate that with construction. So we're looking at the planned route and where we expect construction to be, and we're making sure the two are coordinating. And I guess it's better if the two are separate, and so everyone can safely access the parade. But more details certainly to follow on the Main Street project as we work out all the rest of these details. So those are just a couple updates, and I can take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Moyer.
Thanks. Aidan. Is there a tentative completion date that they would have, or?
So I believe the completion date for the project was July 2023.
I guess I would mean for the first phase.
I believe that's for the overall project, and we are looking at how with it getting a bit of a later start than maybe we originally wanted. We're looking at what construction activities may be permitted throughout the winter months, noting that, you know, we have to have plows operating and all that. So, but the plan is to have the project done next year. I believe July is the completion date.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Canales.
Thank you. Well, Jane, you certainly got your teeth into some big projects here, didn't you? Thank you for the update. Well done. My question for you is, and it may be premature, or you may not be familiar with it, but is the SCADA program in Nelson Craig, is that going to be on budget, or do you even know? Like, do you have that information available to you?
So it's maybe a little bit early to say that, but yes, I think as things are looking right now, it will be on budget. We have a really good consultant supporting us with this, Aramosa, and they're very skilled and with this sort of equipment, and confident that it should be done on budget.
Other questions? Councillor McClinchy.
Jaden, for the, are they not hoping to do the first phase for the construction on Main Street from the north end, hopefully down to the Cameron Gillies? Down, they're providing the weather's good and no other snags.
Yep, I can provide some information on that. So that was that's correct. That was the first stage of construction as defined in the construction contract and tender documents. We are working with the contractor to, I guess, refine that based on, you know, starting construction in October and having a limited amount of time. We met with the contractor on Monday, and we are looking at shortening up that first phase because that is a very large stretch of construction to tackle all at once. So we make sure that the first phase is a manageable piece of work rather than, you know, tear up the whole road at once. So it is looking at being shortened up, but we are looking at the whole project and opportunities for where the best place to start will be. So those details aren't finalized yet, and I do hope to have those by the end of this week.
Okay, so when they start up the north end, they're just going to do section by section, right? They're not going to go right down to Cameron Gillies and open it up. That's
correct. Yeah, it'll be shorter, a shorter section at once.
Okay. Other questions? No other questions on those? Thanks, Jane. Thanks for the updates. I have one item under other business, and I've talked with Jonathan a little bit on it, and I've talked with Vance on it as well. Vance has 3 more of the speed signs on order now, right? Which we talked about, but I'd like to have a conversation here a little bit in the fact that what is our needs? Like, I don't think 3 gets it. So my question here to council is, because it's a bit of a budget item as well. I guess I look at it that I look at Elsa Craig as needing 3 speed signs. There's 3 definite areas coming in. Narren needs 1. Park Hill needs 3, 1 at each end of Main Street plus at West Park Drive. So that's my thinking up front. Then keeping the trailer as a mobile unit and possibly even having 1 more as, you know, if it's needed somewhere that we're missing. So we are talking about 7 speed signs. Now we have 1 now on the trailer and there's already 1 at Elsa Craig. So we'd be looking at 5 more speed signs. 3 of them are on order. I would like to see, because I believe it's going to be next year before we get any more if we order them.
Mayor Rob, then what's the cost of these signs?
Jonathan.
Through your worship
Great
to
signs.
Councilor McClinchy. It really depends on the model and what we want to have, what we want them to do. Solar being the most expensive typically. I'm speaking on behalf of our public works manager right now. He prefers the battery operated ones because there's less components. You can go and check on them, make sure that they're not, you know, someone has, you know, played with them a little bit. However, you know, there's staffing staffing mobilization with more signs we have, how much time are we spending cycling through and doing all the signs. So we have ordered 3 right now, 2 of which are going to be solely dedicated to Park Hill Main Street. We're having a 3rd as kind of a just in case if we find out that there's a demand because of the construction that we need to mobilize somewhere else. We have that 3rd. So we have gone out of the way to purchase that under the project on our own. So these are our signs at the end of the day. And we did that on purpose. So it wasn't rolled up into the contract with Briax and they get to walk away with them. So really what we're talking about to get to Mayor Rop's compliment is an extra 2 signs within this calendar year or consideration for next year. The other thing I would offer for compliment to the discussion is that there is such a thing as being signed to death. And just, I respect what speed signs do. We implemented them, we saw great success. The trailer offers the best flexibility for us because it's there, then it's not, then it's re-education and it's mobile. I don't think we'll have sign fatigue in a year, but possibly in year 2 and 3, we may have to reconsider putting them somewhere else, right? And that can be just a subtle change, but we can certainly look into purchasing 2 more now. Whether we have, but to answer your question for budget purposes, they range from anywhere from 7,000 per unit to about 3,000 per unit, I believe.
So if I can just
ahead.
respond to that, talking with our works manager, he said that with tax and everything in it was about $4,000 each for these signs.
Well, it's better than having to replace someone's life or something. And when I've been out in the campaign trail, I went to 640 places already. And the thing is, that was one of the greatest concerns was the speed going by somebody's home where there's small children, where there's people with walkers, people with their scooters. And West Park Drive was definitely number 1. And with Station Street too, but we can look at another alternative for Station Street, hopefully, because there are a lot of kids playing out in the road or basketball stuff. They don't even look. I mean, and people with and walkers and mobiles, they're not always looking, sort of thing. But the safety of our residents is well worth it, and I would certainly support it.
Okay, Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, and on that comment, that nice new pavement that goes straight through here towards Elsie Craig, man, it sure picked up the speed, I'll tell you. As I can witness that.
If I can offer something for council's consideration, 2 signs are well below our procurement policy. If you give us direction today, we'll find it. I can't guarantee where they're going to come in because they have a lot of components with it, but we have made the purchase order for the 3 to try to get ahead of it. We can certainly put in another one.
Oh, just a minute, Councillor Nickel.
I agree with Mayor Rupp that we probably need at least 7. My question is, when we put these signs up, especially in new locations, can we coordinate it with the OPP to make sure that those signs are being followed? So right now we're putting signs up. You either follow it or you don't. Without the OPP enforcing that, it still becomes a very large issue with speeding. So like, I'm just asking Jonathan, can we
Through
let
your
the
worship.
OPP know we're putting those signs up and work with them at the same time?
Through your worship, to the counselor, I'll paraphrase what happened last time when we purchased the signs, is that I did identify to our counterparts that it was there. I didn't get a response back, but I will definitely leverage the opportunity to speak to them to voice our concerns about speed once again.
Okay, hold your hand up. Deputy Mayor Canales.
My question is a simple one, and I'm expecting not a positive response, but all the roads we're talking about are actually county roads as county traffic. Would they be interested in contributing to the cost?
That is something that we can ask on Tuesday when we go there. Absolutely, we can bring that forward to the county engineer and to finance. All right. But Jaden, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to share some more information I have learned about these speed radar signs. I was talking with one of our suppliers who provided the previous signs, and there's some other capabilities that they have beyond just the speed radar flashing on the screen. There are a lot of tools and options available for data collection. You can do vehicle counts with them. It can collect data on vehicle speeds. So if there are certain times of the day or night that we're finding vehicles are going excessively fast, or we can see patterns in that, we can use that data to make decisions, of course, but also to pass that on to the law enforcement to have enforcement maybe at those times. So that's something that staff can also look into as we look into these additional speed radar signs.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rob. And just as a point of interest, out in Saskatchewan, they have speed laser devices, and it triggers an automatic ticket to you as a vehicle owner. It tracks the plate in the city of Regina. Each location that they had there, and there was about 10, each location averaged about $1.2 million a year. Believe it or not. Yes. So something like that. And I don't think that's here in Ontario yet, but it's very effective in the city of Regina. And I can speak to that personally.
Councillor Moyer.
My question is similar to Richard's. I know in the city of London, they have implemented photo radar again. I don't know whether the OPP have that capability or not. But that is, I mean.
Through your worship to Councillor Moyer, I believe the framework that was offered to the city of London was related to the stoplight, right? So it's going through a stoplight, not necessarily speed.
No, they have them speed zones.
Do they?
in
Oh, yes,
4 or
that's right.
5
They
of the
recently
school
had them at
areas.
school zones,
Yes.
right? I could certainly look into that. There would be a probably a slew of bylaws that would have to accompany the framework of that, but it's certainly not a mountain that I'm not afraid to try going up. But if that's, I think that the capital expenditure might be a little bit too much out of the scope of what we're speaking to today, but we certainly can investigate.
But the OPP used to have the units, the photo radar units. I mean, they would move them around the different areas, of course, but and I agree with Richard. The financial hit is more of a deterrent than a light flashing, you're going too fast. So.
Or the one with the thumbs up, right? When you're doing it.
But it's still a start. It's still a start. And I guess is there any other questions on it? Any other comments? I guess what I'm looking for is council to approve purchasing. We have 3 on order, purchasing 2 more as well. So a total of 5. Would you make that motion? Moved by Councillor McClinchy, a seconder. Councillor Hemming. All in favor? Carried. All right. Thank you. Any other business? No other business? All right, we'll move on. Deferred items are there in front of you. Communications from county council. If you've seen that, you'll see that we did talk about that monitoring at the county last time. Any questions for the county here tonight? No? If not, reading of the bylaws.
Thank you, your worship. There is one bylaw for tonight, and that is number 100 of 2022, the confirming bylaw.
First and second, Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried. Third and final. Councillor Moyer, Councillor Nickel, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And adjournment. Councillor McClinchy and Councillor